In a new interview with NBC's Meet the Press, President Trump said he doesn't know if he needs to uphold the U.S. Constitution when it comes to giving immigrants the right to due process.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says
I don't know. It seems it might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people.
President Trump went on to say that he was elected to get some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth out of the U.S., but he says the courts are getting in his way. President Donald Trump has announced plans to reopen the notorious island prison Alcatraz.
On Sunday, President Trump directed the Bureau of Prisons and other federal agencies to rebuild and enlarge the prison. Located off the coast of San Francisco, Alcatraz closed more than 60 years ago due to critical infrastructure issues, high maintenance costs as well. Bringing it up to modern-day standards would likely require massive investments at a time when the Bureau of Prisons has been shutting prisons down for similar infrastructure issues. Trump's order comes as he continues to clash with the courts over his immigration crackdown. And former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who represents San Francisco in Congress, pointed out that the prison has since been turned into a major tourist attraction. It is ran by the National Park Service, and she says President's proposal is not a serious one. Former Vice President Mike Pence has been honored for his courageous actions during the insurrection attempt at the Capitol, January 6th of 2021.
On Sunday, Pence was awarded the John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award. It recognized Pence's refusal to cooperate with President Trump's effort to disrupt the transfer of power after losing the 2020 election. During his acceptance speech, the former vice president defended his actions and the Constitution.
And I hope in some small way, my presence here tonight is a reminder that whatever differences we may have as Americans, the Constitution is the common ground on which we stand.
The award ceremony happened just hours after President Trump, after President Trump refused to commit to upholding the Constitution when it came to due process for immigrants. In an interview, said he didn't know whether he could do that. Pence joined former Presidents Barack Obama, George H.W. Bush, and Gerald Ford in accepting the award. Cardinals marked the final day of mourning for Pope Francis yesterday, with the official 9-day mourning period now over the Vatican, or as the Vatican prepares to begin the Conclave to pick a new leader of the Catholic Church. 133 cardinals from 17 countries are eligible to participate in the Conclave. It's set to begin Wednesday. This is the largest number of cardinals ever to take part in the tradition. All eyes will be on Vatican City starting Wednesday as the conclave gets underway.
Yeah, while cardinals prepare to cast their votes, some outside the Sistine Chapel taking bets on who will be named Pope. Fox's Stephanie Bennett has more from London.
The papal conclave is rooted in centuries-old tradition and covered in secrecy. Still, that's not stopping people from putting their money on the next head of the Catholic Church.
I decided to put Tagle as my captain, as my main candidate to become Pope.
In Italy, tens of thousands are participating in a fantasy football-like online game, picking a team of cardinals they think could be elected as the next Pope. And Americans can get in on the action as well. One expert says millions of dollars have already been wagered.
There are some sort of side wagers and some quirky wagers, things like, will we see a black pope elected?
Current bets also include what name the future pope will choose and how long the conclave could last. While traditional casinos and sports books in the U.S. cannot legally offer bets on the conclave, Kalshi, a regulated predictions market, allows users to trade on outcomes of real-world events.
The futures market that is Kalshi, that didn't exist in 2013, that has won some court cases in Nevada and New Jersey that is allowing it to operate in the U.S. while the courts determine whether or not it's legal. We may not be able to wager on that site in the future.
Religious critics have raised concerns about this in the past. The Roman Catholic Church had once threatened to excommunicate those who took part.
Betting on who is going to be the Pope goes back hundreds of years.
The conclave is set to begin Wednesday. A puff of white smoke will emerge from the Sistine Chapel's chimney when a new Pope is chosen. In London, Stephanie Bennett, Fox News.